Let's talk about albums. For the longest time, as I think about the ever-changing world, um, I was never really comfortable with this until July 2nd, 2018, until this day. I just feel like the album is dead. I just don't know if the album is really pertinent in today's society. I'm not saying we're not going to get albums anymore. I'm not saying people are going to stop making albums. I'm just saying it is no longer the mode of transportation from music, from the artist to the listener. It just isn't. Everybody is streaming much more than they are buying, and they're taking singles much more than they are taking complete albums. It's just the way the world is. And the reason why I'm comfortable with albums not being a thing anymore, even though I love my vinyl, and anytime an artist I love comes out with an album, I'm going to be all over it. I'm going to be more excited for the album than I am the single. That's never going to change. Never, ever. But the reason why I'm okay with it nowadays is because I've kind of come to this conclusion that a lot of artists don't even want to make them anymore. It's a struggle. It doesn't make sense. You used to be able to put a band in a studio for a year and a half, right? Put them in this studio for 4 months, move them to LA, put them in that studio, move them to London and put them in that studio. That's just the way it was. People paid for it. It was expensive. They did it. They sold an album. They made all their money back and then some. That was the business model. Business model has drastically changed. People aren't spending as much time in these studios. These studios that were once hallowed ground are closing, right? The music business behind the scenes is changing drastically. Artists are making a lot more stuff in their home studios, so on and so forth. There's a lot of reasons why, but you hear it from artists all the time. And I think if an artist has a full 10, 11, 12, 14 songs that go together, if there's a concept behind it, go with God, man. God bless you. Put that bad boy out. I'll be happy to listen to it. I think that is a case where the album lives on for a long time. But I think what we're seeing from a lot of artists, especially the younger ones that don't have that built up credibility, financially it doesn't work, inspirationally it doesn't work. I mean, it just seems like a real outdated mode of, like I said, communication between artist and listener. Go buy my album. It just doesn't, and CDs and MP3, for those of us that love that vinyl sound, I feel like we're going to be there forever. But I mean, be honest, you'd easily buy an EP for a little bit less money than you would buy an album, and you still get the vinyl, and you know what I'm saying? So I just think that collection of 12 tracks together is not as pertinent today as it used to be. And I just think the world is changing. And Sheryl Crow agrees with me. So if you don't, here's Sheryl Crow with Kyle Meredith on K1010 what WPO. I don't even know. I should know enough to credit him with a radio station. I'll figure it out. But anyway, here's Sheryl Crow talking about this very factor and her next album that she's going to put out, which she says will be her last for some of the reasons that I pointed out. And also, when you listen to who she's got on this album, she says, how can I top this? And I tend to agree. The list of artists she's got on this one is pretty ridiculous. Really, really ridiculous.
I've got this record in the can that's going to come out next year, and it's a very collaborative record with people I've asked to collaborate with me, the people I've loved and have worked with and have been heroes of mine forever. And I have people like Stevie Nicks on it, and Keith Richards, and Joe Walsh, and Don Henley, who was one of the first people to give me a gig. Johnny Cash is on it. And I really love the record so much. But at the same time, I think, how would I follow that up with an album? And I do think that albums as an art form are kind of, a little bit of a dying art form, that people are more interested in singles. So I've sort of made the decision in my head that the record that comes out next year will be my last full album, and I'll just start putting songs out. And that feels good to me. It feels great not to spend the time in the studio to make a fully realized conceptual album, but just to put out really pertinent songs that feel immediate.
So there's Sheryl Crow on that whole topic. And there's a lot there. There's a lot in that to digest. But, first and foremost, what? Stevie Nicks? Johnny Cash? Don Henley? Joe Walsh? Keith Richards? All on one record? Damn, that's going to be good. I am excited about it. How long has she been sitting on that Johnny Cash? I'm actually a little angry with Sheryl, to be honest with you. I'm upset. No one sits on Johnny Cash that long. That's insanity. That would be hard to follow up. But you heard what she said right there. And I think that's the important thing. It's like to come up with it. I feel, this is how I honestly feel about it. If you have it, if it's there, if that Sgt. Pepper's, if that Ziggy Stardust is burning inside you and you want to put it out as a collection, as a full 12, 14, 10, whatever tracks, and you want to, yes, put it out. But I think more often than not, the artists don't have that. And what Cheryl's speaking about is she wants to put out stuff that's pertinent. If you want to really, respond to something, or you're inspired about something, if you want to suddenly write 4 songs about shuffleboard, if that's what's inspiring you, and you got these 4 songs and that's it, and you don't want to build an album off it, but you want to share these 4 because they're so, then I think you just put them out. Whereas in years past, it was like, bands would be discovered or found and they'd have one good song and a lot of garbage, and record labels would throw them in the studio and be like, fill out an album, figure it out. Here's a bunch of writers. Here's a bunch of other songs that we have. Just put it, we got to figure it out, man. And I think that type of thinking is what is gone. I think that type of thinking is gone. I think unless that material that an artist is building is conceptual and part of a bigger thing, I think it's gone. And how many times, and we're seeing this a lot more with hip hop than we are with, rock bands and pop artists. And I think that's because sometimes tracks are there. A hip hop artist at any random time will have like 1,000 tracks on them, just great beats that they've just had and they just keep there. And how many times do they, something happens in the world, they're inspired, they put down something, and they're able to get it out so much faster. And I think that other artists kind of want to do that. I think if something happens and they're inspired and they write something, from the time of inspiration and conception to the time of release can be a lot shorter nowadays than it's ever been before. Sometimes, I think we've seen this a lot in the case with Bruce, it's great to just sit on that stuff for a long time and really polish it up and make it good. Bruce, U2. And sometimes, perhaps not. Dave Matthews, for instance, on his last album was like, the album before this last one, I sat on stuff for too long, worked on it for too long. At this one, I got out, I just put it out. Just hit a point and was like, that's it, it's done. And he felt better about it. So, I think the artists are going to adapt same way, as what the listening habits and buying habits are sort of going in, which is quicker now, of the moment. Give me the 2 or 3 songs, not necessarily the 12. That may be hard for some to hear. A little hard for me to say, but I think it's true. What do you think? Is the album dead? That's the question for today. Is the album dead?